Welcome back to Preparing for Online Delivery. In this video, we will be introducing you to Blackboard's collaboration tools.
Thank you, Bree. Once again, let's just go into Blackboard and just see what we can do. And I'll warn you now, Blackboard for collaboration is kind of limited, but we can make it work in our favor. So once again, I'm going to mute my camera and I'm going to share my screen. And here's where we left off in the last video in the Grade Center. But we're talking about collaboration today. So what I'd want to invite you to consider is that as our synchronous tool, we're going to start with Google Meet because that is kind of the go-to synchronous collaboration tool that we're using here at Mount Royal. And on the pod site, this is outlined very clearly about how you would introduce Google Meet and bring it into Blackboard. So those video tutorials are all there. So I'm not going to rehash that. But I want you to know that, you go into Google Calendar, create your Meet link, and you can actually post that link here in your left navigation in your main menu here. And so I could easily, have that copied, that link, and then come to the navigation here and click on web link. I can give it a name saying our online course or our synchronous session or our virtual classroom, and then I could paste that Google Calendar Meet link in the URL area, make it available to users, and hit submit. And now students have one button here that they can click to enter your synchronous session. And know that link is alive 24/7, 365 days a year. Doesn't matter where you made that link in Google Calendar, just as long as you made that link and you're the only one invited to that meeting and you paste that link there. And now you have a really nice synchronous collaboration tool via Google Meet. Another question that came up from folks as they move through these sessions were breakout rooms. Now, Google Meet does have some limitations, but you could theoretically make breakout rooms by having multiple Meet links. So maybe, as I said, I have our class link here in the navigation, but maybe in a content page, I can add something like Google breakout rooms. And so through adding web links or an item, I can just post those links and maybe call it breakout A, breakout B, breakout C. So that would entail me going to Google Calendar, generating 4 unique links, coming back into Blackboard and just renaming them as 4 different breakout rooms. And then you can actually click and move between those rooms just in your browser, just several clicks away. So even though there isn't a native breakout rooms in Meet, you could do this little hack here and just create 4 separate Google Meet meetings and just bounce in between them. And as long as you're explicit where your students need to go, then that's great. They have the instruction and they won't get lost in the woods. So there's one idea around collaboration that you can leverage. And I believe, Patty, you had a comment about
just around guidelines for your students and how to participate in instructions. And so just a reminder that in this template, we do have some guidelines for working in online groups. And so you can customize those instructions, and it'll be really helpful for your students to know what the expectations are for when they're working together, either in a synchronous session or asynchronously, which I think you'll be talking about in discussion forums. The other 2 things, John, just that occurred to me as you were speaking, just a reminder for folks that tutorials on how to create those meeting spaces in Google Meet and bring those links into Blackboard. There are 2 video tutorials about how to do that on the pod website under tutorials. So you can find step-by-step instructions in how to do that. The other thing, just a reminder to folks that, we're recording these sessions in early June, and we've heard whisperings and rumors that Google may, in fact, create breakout rooms built into Google Meet. They're always adding features in, and so maybe by the time you're watching this, that feature will be there. If not, though, these creative hacks that John has shared with you are ways to get around that. So that's it for me, John.
All right, thank you, Patty. And I think in terms of collaboration here, so we kind of covered how to bring in that synchronous portion, but there's also asynchronous collaboration, and this can occur in multiple ways in Blackboard. And one tool, as mentioned before, is the discussion board. This will get leveraged heavily, most likely in your course. Maybe not, but it's usually a go-to collaboration piece. As mentioned before in the template, we offer 2 forums already pre-built for you around Q&A for the course and a virtual cafe and informal learning space. But maybe this is an area where you want to get into critical discussions and critical thinking with your students. So you can create a forum around a specific topic or article, and then really have the students engage that article in a meaningful way. And as Patty mentioned, there are, you should have certain guidelines around your discussion board. And if you are doing scholarly writing and interpretation in your discussion boards, maybe you want to be explicit with that expectation. So maybe, every discussion post has to have a certain word length. Maybe it needs 1 to 2 references from the literature. And maybe you actually want to have some sort of exemplar showing what a proper discussion board post would look like. Without kind of rules to confine students around discussion boards, they can devolve quite quickly to kind of messy Facebook type opinions that really don't add to the conversation. So, make sure the students have a good set of guidelines and understand what a proper scholarly discussion post would be. So that I think that's always a great thing. And so if you needed to add more discussion boards, there's a couple ways you can do it. If you're using the template, you can click into discussion board here and create forum right away. Or you can come down to your course tools and click into discussion board. And here you see the course name. So this is what I was talking about in a previous video, how discussion board is just a tool in Blackboard. Really what students are engaging are in forums. So I'm clicking in, the only discussion board tool is for the class here, clicking into that. And here's where I'd create that forum. So there's another way to enter into the discussion board tool to create forums. So, maybe this one is a scholarly article, and so the forum itself would be dedicated to that article. Maybe you'd create the forum and in the instructions. So let's walk through this actually real quick. And all this is covered in the Blackboard On Demand site to walk you through how to actually do all these things as well. So I give the forum a name and I can give it a description. So in the description, I can set my expectation. I can introduce the article that I want the students to be responding to. All those good things I can put here. I can make the forum available. I can have it date restricted, so I can have it open and closed at a certain time. So maybe it's only a week 2 forum, and I can set those dates appropriately. You can actually make these discussion boards gradable. So down here, I can actually say it is 4 grades, and then I have to give the points possible. I want to say that the points possible do not confuse the points possible for the weighting. So maybe discussion boards are worth 15% of the total mark. You would not put the 15% here. You'd put what's your grading rubric for a discussion board post? Maybe it's 15 points, your grading rubric, or however it is you're assessing the students. That's the number you want to put here, the points, not the weight. So however it is, maybe you're just kind of grading them out of 100. So you can put 100 there. So I just want you to know that you do not put the weighting there. It's the actual points for the assessment. And another thing you might want to consider is allow the author to delete own posts. Click that, that expands, and only posts with no replies. This is nice because sometimes people may have regrets about what they posted. And as long as no one's replied to it, give them the ability to take it back and change it. The reason why you wouldn't do all posts is that maybe that reply is your assessment and you do not want students deleting things after they've been assessed, right? We want to have a record of that. So this is a nice thing to click off and only post with no replies are a nice option to have, just so students can actually have a few moments to take back their words. And we should afford students that ability. Other than that, you can subscribe to forums and you can get emailed if something's new, add to it. When you're grading the forum, Blackboard is really great. It can actually parse out all the student contributions individually, and then you can see who's done what. So that's that's another discussion, but that's the kind of the overview of discussion boards. I know Luciano is very familiar with discussion boards. Maybe there's something you want to say, Luciano, about discussion boards before I move on.
Thanks, John. And yeah, so discussion boards are great tools for creating that sense of community among your students. That's the place where they can engage in conversations amongst themselves. They can exchange resources. And that's also a place where you can start to foster that formation of a discourse around the topics you are teaching. But reinforcing something that John already mentioned, these tools only work if they are clearly planned and they are aligned with what you want your students to learn. So be sure that you have specific guidelines and that activities you are using that uses discussion boards are really purposeful. They are making sense to your students and they are aligned with your course outlines.
Yeah, just to add on to Luciano's point, just again around that strategic piece, because one of the things I've sometimes encountered is an overuse of the discussion board as sort of the only activity. And if you're doing discussion boards all the time and it starts to feel like a rote activity, students start losing interest in it. It's like, I'm just going to check the box off. How many words do I have to do to get this week's discussion assignment done? So just re-emphasizing Luciano's point about being intentional, strategic, and making sure that what you're asking students to do in the discussion board is in fact meaningful, and they don't feel like it's just checking a box or jumping through a hoop to get their grade.
Yes, thank you for that. And I can even speak from my own experience as being a student. Discussion board fatigue is a real thing. It's almost like almost hitting like that snooze alarm is like, oh, discussion boards do hit the snooze, because I know another one's due in 7 days or 3 days, and try not to do that to your students. But if it's necessary, sometimes things are necessary and we just can't escape it. But just be mindful, I would say, as you're moving through that. Thank you for that input there on the on discussion boards from both of you. I appreciate that. Next, I guess, for the collaboration piece, and this is probably the last place I'm going to stop with, is groups. Blackboard does a wonderful job of organizing your students into groups and gives you a nice platform to manage those groups. So to create groups in your course, you're just going to come down to users and groups, expand that, and then click into groups. And the nice thing about this, and I guess the current state of the literature basically says that the learning achievement of students it cannot measure any difference in learning achievement based on how groups were formed. So if you formed a group randomly, if the students self-selected their group, or if you chose the group for the students, the literature is not showing that any way is better than the other in terms of students' performance. So with that in mind, I would like to invite you to Blackboard groups and random enroll. So Blackboard can take all of your students and randomly enroll them into groups and make the groups for you. So I'm just going to give you a quick look at what that could look like. So you come into the enrollment group set. You can put the word group here. You wouldn't put group 1 because Blackboard, if I could spell group, because Blackboard will put a number in afterwards. So if you did put 1 there, you'd get group 1-1, group 1-2, group 1-3. So just put group or whatever the name is, and Blackboard will number it for you. You can give a description of what the purpose of the groups are. You can add that information there. And then we come down to tool availability. Blackboard has many tools and features that we do use at times and some we don't use at times. So I would encourage you to uncheck any tool that students are not using. Sometimes you have specific purposes for your groups. For instance, I want a group discussion board, so you'd uncheck everything except for discussion board. Students can still email each other outside of the group, other places in Blackboard. So really the email isn't necessary to turn on. The file exchange is not necessary to turn on because typically we keep our files in Google Drive. And students kind of have their own toolbox already for collaboration. And please, encourage them to use that their own knowledge or their own way of communicating to collaborate as well. But this is nice if students don't have certain things available to them, you can always provide it through our institutional tools. But if students already kind of have a way of doing it, there's no problem with letting them do it that way, just as long as their deliverable is in a format that they can submit to Blackboard so you can assess. That's the real thing. If they're making a video, it doesn't really matter how they made the video as long as they're submitting the video complete and meeting all your expectations for that video. When you are configuring your courses here, maybe you're just using Blackboard to make the groups and that's it. So maybe there's some group assignments that need to be submitted. And then that's all there is. So you can uncheck all these tools. Blackboard will make a group. The students will see who the group members are, and then they'll just work together and then go to that group assignment and submit. So that's another way groups could be made. So just know that turn off tools if you don't need them. Keep the tools on if you do need them. And that's it for making groups. You come down to the bottom now. You either declare to Blackboard, I want 5 students in each group, or I want 10 groups. And then what do you do with the remainder? So Blackboard will figure all that out for you, and you hit submit, and boom, you have your groups already made. Know that if you are, and we'll cover this bit in the assessment portion, know that if you are doing a group assignment Dropbox, you must have the groups made first, and then go in and make that assignment Dropbox for groups. But other than that, that's basically what collaboration could look like in Blackboard, and the tools that are available to you to collaborate with just that little Google piece for that synchronous session there. Any other comments from the panel?
Sure, just one example, sort of this idea of using Google Meet and Blackboard collaboratively. In conjunction with each other. One of the things I've seen in relation to Blackboard groups is a faculty member wanted a virtual space for students to be able to work synchronously together. Now, as you said, students might have their own ways of connecting, but just in case, this faculty member wanted to create a little breakout room for them. So did exactly the process we talked about in creating Google Meet breakout rooms. And for each group, put the link in a discussion forum thread so that it's like, okay, if you need a space to talk in real time, here's something set up for you that you can easily access. And so it was a really nice feature there. So students were able to work both asynchronously and synchronously in their groups quite easily. And again, with the option of choosing other ways of connecting if that worked for them, but having something ready and set up if they just wanted to use the tools presented to them.
Thank you, Patty, for that. That's an excellent point. And so you can actually, for each group, you can go into your Google Calendar, you can make a Meet link, and you can, Patty described a discussion board scenario, but you could even just put it right into the group description as well, maybe because you're not using discussion board with the group, but just know that you could embed a link in there easily for students to get to a synchronous session to chat. Yeah, I'll just leave that part there. All right, well, if there's no more comments, just thank you for watching this video, and I guess I'll throw it over to Bree once again. I'm stealing her thunder.
Thanks, John. And thanks to all of the panelists for your comments around collaboration. Be sure to join us for the next video where we cover Blackboard's assessment tools. Bye for now.